The flames raged furiously, plunging the building into a sea of fire. The surrounding air was so hot it seemed to warp. Thick smoke billowed high into the sky. The sect members hurriedly used water to douse the flames. Shouts echoed from all around. "It'll be a disaster if it reaches the warehouse. Hasn't the Bang Chu arrived yet?" Seeing the massive fire, the steward quickly ordered his subordinates. "Go get more people quickly." Dozens of men rushed to douse the fire with buckets of water. The continuous sound of water being thrown could be heard. The chaotic shouts from everyone made the atmosphere even more tense. "Be careful. Hurry up, the wind is getting stronger." At this moment, the Bang Chu arrived, witnessing the scene of his residence engulfed in a sea of flames, along with the acrid smell of burning. He was so shocked he couldn't believe it. What is happening here? No one had time to answer him. Everyone was trying their best to put out the fire. The sea of fire that filled the sky seemed to want to burn everything it passed. The Bang Chu anxiously ran to ask a servant, "Where are Ken Enhai and my wife?" The subordinate showed obvious relief upon seeing him. The steward replied to him respectfully, "The madam and the young master are taking refuge at the other estate. Please do not worry too much." The mighty and powerful Bang Chu let out a sigh of relief. With a loud crack, a crossbeam on the roof, having been burnt away by the flames, could no longer bear the weight and came collapsing down, sending a wave of panic through the crowd. All the servants who were near the courtyard dousing the fire frantically backed away to avoid being crushed by the wooden beam. The steward quickly shouted to warn everyone, "Don't stand near there. Everyone back away." The Bang Chu was still staring blankly at his residence as it collapsed. The steward spoke up worriedly, trying to get his attention. "Sect leader, watch out." In his eyes, at this moment only one image remained. A raging fire blazed up, burning down a large courtyard in a remote villa far from the fire, where the sect leader's wife and son took refuge. A voice called out for his mother, but it was a boy's voice trembling with fear. The boy was held comfortingly in his mother's arms. "I'm scared." His voice was so soft, prompting his mother to soothe him lovingly. The sect leader's wife was a gentle and kind mother. She gently hugged her son. "Don't worry, your father will handle everything." Worry flickered in her eyes, but more than that there was a strength she held for her young son. Her hand gently caressed her son's cheek. Her gentle voice repeated patiently, "Everything will be all right, my son." After a tumultuous night, the great fire was extinguished. Fortunately, it did not affect the surrounding areas much. In the reception room of the main courtyard, an old but dignified voice spoke. "Namo Amitabha Buddha." Steam billowed from the tea rising into the air. The great master sighed softly, lamenting last night's fire. The powerful sect leader was sincere and respectful. "Yes, fortunately the fire did not spread. Everything is under control. So, Great Master Kimmo, what brings you here?" The great master lightly ran his fingers over each sandalwood bead of his prayer necklace. Only then did he speak in reply. "This humble monk has mentioned it before. This humble monk has a small talent." The sect leader, the renowned leader of the Van Tan Bang, Truong Dao Dan. He suddenly remembered the small talent the great master mentioned. It was reading fortunes. Great Master Kimmo got straight to the point. "Recently, Benefactor Truong, you have been encountering only misfortune. This humble monk has looked at the child's astrological chart. He had just mentioned this matter, caused Truong Dao Dan's hand holding his teacup to pause midair, filled. With suspicion, he questioned Great Master Kimmo. Ken Nai's fortune. At that moment, the face of the Van Tan clan leader was filled with panic and anxiety. Does this mean some misfortune will befall the child? The young boy Truong Kan, the one they were just speaking of, was currently standing silently looking at a pile of rubble, the aftermath of the fire from the previous night. His face was filled with sorrow for the familiar courtyard that held so many memories. But Great Master Kimmo's voice was one of denial. "That's not exactly it. This only made Truong Dao Dan more anxious and restless. Then does this mean disaster will strike our family?" Great Master Kimmo seemed to hesitate. Amitabha, this humble monk, is at a loss for words. Seeing him being so evasive, Truong Dao Dan could no longer keep his composure. Due to his extreme anxiety, "What is going on? Please, Master, tell me clearly." He kept guessing what the Master's divination had revealed. Is it a fate of family ruin, or will my child have a short life? Kimmo heard all of this, but remained deep in thought, not answering Truong Dao Dan. Finally, he had no choice but to reveal the heavenly secret. The child's fate is very strong. He will live a long life, not die young, however. Hearing there was more, Truong Dao Dan quickly raised his head and listened intently. Great Master Kim-O stated the results of the divination. Though his body is weak, the Jap Mok Chin Kwan acts as a favorable star, but it has transformed into an unfavorable one, causing him to fall upon cracked and barren land. Truong Dao Dan knew nothing of fortune-telling or physiognomy, so he was utterly confused by this. What does that mean? Great Master Kim-O patiently explained. Wealth and fortune will pour into your house, but it will be like pouring water into a leaking jar. The hole is larger than the amount of water you can pour in, so running dry is inevitable. Upon hearing the master's words, Truong Dao Dan was shocked into silence for a long while. Soon after he came to his senses, his eyes widening, as if he couldn't believe what Great Master Kim-O had just said. He lost his composure, slamming the table and asking urgently, Great Master, are you saying that Ken Enhai is that flaw? A child fated to bring ruin to his family. Kim-O softly chanted to help Truong Dao Dan calm his mind. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Even a powerful sect leader has moments when he cannot accept the truth. His hands on the table trembled uncontrollably. Truong Dao Dan's shoulders slumped, as if weighed down by 1,000 burdens. The heavens are truly cruel. I struggled for so long to finally have this son. Kim-O calmly interrupted him. It is not without a solution. In fact, I came here precisely to discuss this with you, Benefactor Truong. Truong Dao Dan was surprised, but more so he was filled with unconcealable joy. He asked again and again, is there really a way? At this time, Truong Khan was being carefully and meticulously taught to read by his mother. He was a studious child, so he learned to read very quickly. His eyes shone brightly as if he had made a new discovery. Great Master Kim-O offered a suitable solution. If the child is sent to a virtuous monk to be taught a simple and humble life, the flaw in his fate can be partially mended. At this moment, Truong Khan was still happily reading and studying with his mother, completely unaware that his life was about to undergo a world-shattering change. Upon hearing this suggestion, Truong Dao Dan immediately felt hesitant. But the child is my only son. I was already over 40 when I finally had him. He did not agree to this proposal. To tell me to let him become a monk, wouldn't that mean ending my family line? Great Master Kim-O remained seated. His calm demeanor remained unchanged by Truong Dao Dan's reaction. At this moment, Truong Khan was still happily reading, studying with his mother, completely unaware that his life was about to undergo a change, a truly earth-shattering one. When Truong Dao heard this suggestion, he immediately felt hesitant. But the child is my only son. I was over 40 when I finally had him. He rejected the suggestion that I let him become a monk, for wouldn't that mean ending my bloodline? Great Master Kim-O remained seated, his calm demeanor completely unchanged by Truong Dao's reaction. Truong Dao Dan calmly asked in return, surely you can't mean that this humble monk would advise Patron Truong to send his son to a monastery? Great Master Kim-O patiently explained, as long as he is properly raised until the child is 8 years old. Once his personality has been formed, there will be no more problems. Truong Dao Dan could not hide the joy in his voice as he asked for confirmation. So he doesn't have to become a monk. Great Master Kim-O said helplessly, that is correct. A monk advising someone not to join a monastery. What a contradiction. Truong Dao Dan laughed happily. Great Master, you really scared me. He had considered everything thoroughly. As it happens, this monk knows a suitable place to entrust the child. When the time is right, I will come to get the child. Truong Dao Dan was deeply moved and thanked the Great Master profusely. A million thanks. The compassionate Great Master Kim-O replied, this monk has done nothing at all. It is all thanks to the merit that Patron Truong has accumulated. The Buddha is our witness. Namo Adida Fat. Seeing this, even as a clan leader, Truong Dao Dan was filled with respect. He put his palms together and chanted solemnly, Namo Adida Fat. Great Master Kim-O began to explain the principles of Buddhism to Truong Dao Dan. Tin Tam Dao Fong Vidao Nahan Thien. Duk Tu Van Han Giai Fat Du Yin. Faith in the path of the Tao leads to an enlightenment that surpasses men and gods. His being was filled with the righteous aura of Buddhism. as he chanted with his palms together virtue, wisdom, and countless good deeds, are all karmic affinities with Buddhism. Namo Adita Phot. Truong Dao Dan was also enlightened by that profound philosophy. With a heart full of faith, he softly chanted Namo Adita Phot. The warm sunlight shone down on the grand estate, the magnificent and splendid manor of the Van Tan Bang, the young master of the clan leader's mansion accustomed to a life of luxury. He was once again forced onto a carriage by his family sent away from home to the temple. His mother repeatedly cried out Truong Khan's name. He couldn't bear it either. He turned to console his wife. Please, my dear, stop crying. We have already decided on this. She broke down crying with worry. How can we be so cruel as to abandon our own child like this? Truong Dao Dan didn't have the heart for it either, but there was no other choice. Truong Khan had been pampered since birth and had never known hardship. How could he accept it? He struggled and refused to get into the carriage. Truong Dao Dan tried to comfort his wife. It is Zen Master Kwang Mook of Shaolin. He will personally teach Arcan Nhi. At this, she cried even harder. That Zen master has such a strange personality. Everyone is wary of him, so why send Arcan Nhi to someone like that? Hearing this, great master Kim O also felt a bit uneasy. Truong Dao Dan quickly tried to reason with his wife. His virtue and wisdom are profound. How could ordinary people like us possibly understand? He couldn't bear to be separated from his son. But it was all for the sake of the family and the entire sect. He promised it would only be for 15 years. Truong Dao Dan swore it again and again. Only 15 years, no more, no less. This finally caused her to relent. Despite Truong Khan's unhappy struggles, Truong Dao Dan sternly ordered the family servants, "Take him away at once." Both mother and son clung to each other, unwilling to part. Truong Khan was just a child who had never been away from home. How could he possibly be calm? 3 servants worked together to finally get Truong Khan safely onto the carriage. They couldn't bear to hurt him, so they could only try to persuade him to stop struggling. Truong Khan stubbornly clung to the carriage door with all his might. This made Great Master Kim O have to gently coax him. Seeing this, Truong Dao Dan sternly called out to him. Can Nhi father has already explained everything. His loud yells stunned the boy. If you do not go, our family will face ruin. Our entire household could even lose their lives. The fate of our family rests upon your shoulders. How could the young Truong can possibly understand or carry such a burden? Model. He felt wronged and hurt, his eyes welling up with tears. In the moment Truong Khan relaxed his struggle, the carriage door finally closed. Overwhelmed by all his pent-up hurt and resentment, he continuously hammered on the door. I am not going. Let me out. Master Kim O also let out a sigh. Faced with Truong Khan's fierce resistance, he softly chanted Namo Adita Phot. His parents said their farewells to Master Kim O. The carriage door was shut tight, as if to signal the turning point of his life. Starting from this very moment, the carriage sped down the road without a single glance back. From here on, Truong Khan's life away from his warm family had begun. When they arrived, there was nothing around but mountains, forests, and grass. For a child, such silence was terribly boring. At that moment, Truong Khan's eyes were still following the carriage that had long since disappeared from view. He could not hold back his feelings of anxiety and hurt. 2 streams of tears rolled down his chubby cheeks. A moment later, he tried again to stop crying, but tears still streamed down both of his cheeks. Truong Khan resolutely pursed his lips and wiped away his tears. Like an abandoned kitten, he stood there silently for a long time, and then came to a bitter realization. No amount of crying or struggling was going to change anything. Truong Khan glanced around his new surroundings, while telling himself that he just had to accept this reality. He looked behind him and saw an old decrepit stone staircase that was completely covered in moss. Just by looking at it, you could tell this towering staircase was ancient. At the top of the stone steps, an imposing figure was looking down. It was none other than Kwang Mok, the Zen master. Truong Khan looked up from below and saw him, but he did not feel the slightest bit of fear. His eyes, as bright as stars, showed his unyielding will, even at such a young age. He had accepted reality, that he would have to live with that gaunt old monk for 15 years, amidst treacherous cliffs and mountains. Surrounded only by forests, leaves, and plants, Kwang Mok's home was just a small hut, with 2 wooden planks outside. There was also a small corner garden with fresh green vegetables. Truong Khan sat on one of the planks, recalling his father's words. Father said I was destined to be the son who would ruin the family, causing the clan to fall. He glanced at Kwang Mok, who was busy planting vegetables. I have to live with this virtuous high monk. Truong Khan, at a young age, was forced to bear a heavy responsibility. He pressed his lips together tightly. If the clan falls, mother, father, and even Hoalan, who brings me delicious snacks every day, they will all die. He understood the current situation clearly, and the responsibility he had to bear. Whether I like it or not, I have to stay here for 15 years. He kept looking towards the old man, while he was still busy planting vegetables. I hope I can get along with this master. Truong Khan let out a long sigh, but Kwang Mok didn't even glance at him once, focusing only on his vegetable garden. He just kept on tending to one vegetable plant after another, as if unconcerned by the presence of a child. Like Truong Khan, the boy looked around and then made a decision. I can't just stand around aimlessly like this. I have to do something. Truong Khan looked around for a moment and noticed a broom leaning in the corner. He quickly grabbed it to sweep up the fallen leaves. In the yard, his sweeping motions were a bit clumsy, sending leaves and dust flying everywhere. At that moment, Kwang Mok could no longer ignore him. He frowned and asked sternly, "The leaves fall and pile up anyway, so why sweep them?" Khan didn't seem afraid because the fallen leaves are piling up. Kwang Mok shouted coldly, "It's useless to try and curry my favor to learn some martial arts." Hearing this, Truong Khan answered honestly and politely, "That is not my intention." But Kwang Mok paid no mind to his explanation. He scoffed coldly, "Just like a merchant's son. In any case, I don't intend to teach. Not the martial arts of Tiu Lam to you." Truong Khan was extremely frustrated that his explanation was useless. The displeasure was clear on his face. He quickly took long strides and walked toward Kwang Mok. A moment later, he stood before Kwang Mok and asked in a clear voice, "You didn't come here to learn martial arts." Seeing Truong Khan so firm and unafraid of him, Kwang Mok was also surprised. The boy's eyes were full of sincerity and resilience. Despite his young age, his future character, will, and fortitude were already visible. Faced with those clear eyes, Kwang Mok was taken back to a long-forgotten memory. "I don't like to associate with others. I have lived alone in this forest for 35 years now." He was not like the other monks, partly because he was lazy, because my martial arts skills are not refined enough to teach. I do not accept disciples. Even the Tu Lam Temple is at a loss with me. They let me do whatever I want. One day, Great Master Kwang Van came to visit him and shared his thoughts. Old people tend to get lonely. Having no one to care for you is also quite boring. How about finding a young attendant to keep you company? Kwang Mok refused outright, even raising his voice to question him. But Great Master Kwang Van simply reminded him gently, "Listen to me. This is not just a request. It is a fate arranged by Buddha." Hearing this, Kwang Mok could not refuse any further, but he could not help but feel annoyed. In his imagination, he had already formed a bad impression of Truong Khan. Truong Khan. Model. I heard that the young boy the abbot mentioned is the son of a merchant, a prominent one. He probably took their money but couldn't just accept him into the temple, so he shoved him over to me. With that in mind, Kwang Mok spoke bluntly. "You're not here to learn martial arts. Do you really think I'd believe that?" He was certain of his assumption. The Truong Khan was here for some ulterior motive. He continued to press him. "Then what are you doing in a remote place like this?" "Whatever you say. That's not what your parents had in mind." Kwang Mok had lost all his patience and coldly turned to leave. "I'll teach you a few moves, and then you can go home." Seeing that the man refused to hear his explanation and was even making all sorts of wild assumptions, Truong Khan became very frustrated. Feeling aggrieved, he shouted out, "I didn't want to come here either." Even though he tried to act tough, he was still just a child. Overwhelmed by the injustice, he burst into tears. "I bear the fate of a Fajia Chitu, and I must live with a virtuous high monk for 15 years. These words clearly made Kwang Mok stop in his tracks. Truong Khan tried his best to hold back his tears, speaking each word through gritted teeth. "If I don't, everyone will die." Kwang Mok was at a loss for words, even though he didn't turn around. His full attention was on the boy behind him. Truong Khan's voice was choked with sobs, but it held an immense resilience. So even if you kick me out, I can't go home. Despite Kwang Mok's stern exterior, he was soft-hearted. He just still had the wrong idea. What kind of cruel parents are they, to go so far as to deceive their own child, just to forge a connection with Tiu Lam? He saw that Truong Khan was still crying. Kwang Mok's mind began to wander again. For Tiu Lam to accept him knowing the situation that's truly cruel. He didn't know how to comfort him, only how to give stern warnings. I don't like seeing boys cry. Then he ordered the boy to stop. Hearing Kwang Mok's strict teacher-like voice, Truong Khan was so startled he momentarily forgot to even cry. He had in a way accepted that the boy would be staying. All right, go to the room and get out of those clothes. They're an eyesore. Truong Khan was clearly confused. Is there something wrong with my clothes? Kwang Mok continued to walk on with a cold demeanor, tossing an explanation over his shoulder. In a remote place deep in the mountains like this, wearing flashy and cumbersome clothes is a nuisance. Truong Khan looked himself over from head to toe. But my mother already chose the simplest outfit for me. But he didn't care, stubbornly sticking to his own idea. Be quiet and follow me. Seeing the boy still hesitating, Kwang Mok lost his patience and shouted, "Hurry up!" Seeing the bowl of dry rice and a meal of only green vegetables and beans, Truong Khan was stunned. You call this a meal? Kwang Mok made no effort to indulge his childish tantrum. We don't use fire in the temple. Eating cooked food can lead to a fiery temperament. A practitioner must always maintain a pure and tranquil mind. If you're always angry, what kind of spiritual practice is that? Truong Khan was used to eating well and living comfortably. How could he possibly adapt so easily? Looking at the meal tray so simple, it couldn't be any simpler, made him feel anxious. He also wasn't used to wearing such coarse fabric, and his whole body felt incredibly uncomfortable. He worried about how he would endure wearing it for 15 years. As for the fine clothes he had worn when he arrived, he had already folded them neatly in the closet. Seeing the boy's reaction, Kwang Mok understood, to some extent, and his heart softened. But there was nothing he could do, so he could only speak in a slightly gentler tone. Just eat. Hearing Kwang Mok say that cooked food makes one temperamental, Truong Khan tried his best to hold back but couldn't stop himself from asking, "Master, do we have to eat like this every day? Why are you always so angry?" He flared up instantly. "When have I ever been angry with you? You keep asking such devastating questions, with that innocent face of yours. Just now, Master was scolding this person, and that person. Master, you hate me, so you gave me this to eat, right?" For a moment, Kwang Mok couldn't refute or argue, but he stubbornly refused to admit it. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Kwang Mok's hand resting on his knee quietly clenched into a fist. "This is the first time I've ever seen a child be so insolent. Or is he trying to provoke me?" Facing the clear, completely guileless eyes of Truong Khan, Kwang Mok was at a loss for words. He just stared at the boy and recognized the innocence in his gaze. So he was genuinely curious. Soft sunlight streamed through the window. Kwang Mok's voice also slowed down. "Food can be eaten without fire. What's the need to start a fire? We must conserve firewood." A life of humble poverty. He understood in his heart, at the boy's age, curiosity is always greater than concern for others' feelings. Truong Khan didn't understand anything about cultivation. He thought the forest was full of firewood, and if his master was too lazy, he would go gather it for him. He also promised to only pick up dry branches, and not to break any living ones. Kwang Mok's patience suddenly vanished again. This kid, honestly, he found it tiresome to have to explain. Just because many dry branches have fallen doesn't mean they are useless. Understand, they will rot and become fertilizer, helping the trees to flourish. Truong Khan quickly understood. So that means I'm not allowed to steal food from the trees. Right, I hadn't thought of that. Hearing the boy's innocent thought, Kwang Mok became even more flustered. He's completely misunderstood it again. Truong Khan, and thinking he was right, he confidently added to his point. Besides, if you keep running and jumping around, the clothes will tear. They would be unwearable. This was enough to annoy even Kwang Mok, a Zen master, seeing the old master's reaction. The boy's eyes were clearly trying to change the subject. His expression clearly showed his dislike for the coarse cloth outfit. Kwang Mok thought even more deeply. This kid is rebelling because he was given a ragged outfit. Down here, why do I feel like I'm being bullied by him? In the end, he finally gave in. When you eat, just eat quietly, understand. Truong Khan was spoiled, but he was still polite. It was just that he had always eaten well since he was a child. So it was understandable that he found the food terrible now. Not only that, he also felt hungry. But he could not ask for more. Because Kwang Mok believed that a full stomach leads to laziness. And laziness is a sin in spiritual cultivation. That night when the moon was high in the sky, when everyone was fast asleep, Truong Khan's pained groans could be heard. He went to the outhouse, but he was struck with a stomachache so bad his whole body trembled. His hand gripped a piece of straw tightly. His entire body was now covered in a cold sweat from the pain. Suddenly, he felt a pain so intense his eyes shot wide open. Truong Khan's dry cough woke Kwang Mok, but he did not seem annoyed at all. He smiled cheerfully, his scheme having succeeded. Eating raw food is not so easy. Kwang Mok thought about the meal from earlier in the day. Truong Khan had eaten it so smugly. I cannot just let you eat delicacies. You have to get used to it somehow. Otherwise you will not be able to endure it. If you cannot stand it and leave the mountain, that would be great for me. Time passed. Truong Khan still had not adapted to the raw food. Instead, he was always complaining. For the past half-month, his stomach hurt every time he ate. Maybe I should go look for wild fruits again. In just a short half a month, he had gotten noticeably thinner, no longer having the appearance of the pampered young master he once was. Kwang Mok suddenly appeared. Where did you run off to yesterday? Truong Khan quickly jumped up to greet him. He was touched, thinking to himself, is teacher worried I would be attacked by wild beasts, or that I would eat poisonous fruit? Seeing that the boy's hands were covered in bloody scratches, and that his feet and shoes were also spotted with red, Kwang Mok was also taken aback. He was worried, but the words of comfort he meant to say came out as a reprimand. What if you tear your clothes by running around recklessly? You would have to buy new shoes, too. Truong Khan explained it was because he was hungry, but he stubbornly insisted you ate 3 meals, how can you still be hungry? You are hungry because you are running around. The boy tried to make him understand. It is too little and it gives me a stomachache when I eat it. Kwang Mok began to lecture him again. Your stomach hurts because you are not hungry enough. A person can survive by eating anything. If you believe you can live by eating grass and trees, you will live. If you think you cannot eat it, then you will not be able to. Truong Khan murmured softly, but what if it is too difficult? Kwang Mok remained stern. Every place holds a Buddha image. Every deed is a Buddha offering. Creating good karma is more difficult than creating bad karma. Hardship is the path of cultivation, and though it is arduous, it accumulates great merit. The more Truong Khan listened, the more dejected he became. Teacher's words are too difficult to understand. I am going to starve to death. Seeing his indifferent attitude, the boy seemed to finally understand the situation. Teacher does not want to help me. Truong Khan grew anxious, his mind racing to figure out a way to fill his small stomach. What should I do? I will starve to death at this rate. Having lost his patience, Kwang Mok flicked his sleeve and turned to leave. I have things to do. You will behave and stay here. Suddenly an idea popped into Truong Khan's head. He looked at the man's back and thought to himself, if I just lie around, I won't get hungry, right? All right, from now on, I'll just eat and then lie down. Kwang Mok had been watching from behind this whole time. He was bewildered by the sight. Why is he suddenly grinning like that? He didn't bother thinking about it anymore. He warned impatiently, remember what I said, and then he quickly left. Back at Kwang Mok's temple. The temple was as quiet as ever nestled in the mountains. He stood before the door with his hands clasped. He looked inside the room. The sight that greeted him was Truong Khan still sound asleep. Seeing him sleeping so soundly that he was drooling, Kwang Mok was extremely annoyed. He shouted, get up already. His powerful voice echoed throughout the small room. It's already past noon, what are you still lazing around for? This made Truong Khan jolt awake and sit up immediately. Although he was a little scared of Kwang Mok, he still stubbornly tried to justify himself. Master, you told me not to move around too much. Moving makes you hungry. That's why I was sleeping. Hearing this seemingly absurd argument, but it was somehow very convincing. Embarrassed and enraged, Kwang Mok yelled. Being lazy and limiting your movement are two different things. Someone who just eats and sleeps isn't a person. They're a freeloading parasite. Truong Khan fell silent, but his eyes said it all. Feed the parasite first, then we can talk. Seeing that the boy still looked completely clueless, Kwang Mok became furious, flicked his sleeves and stormed off. This is just hopeless. The door slammed shut, leaving Truong Kan even more confused. He didn't understand what he had done wrong. He hugged his clothes, looked up at the ceiling and sighed. What am I supposed to do now? As for Master Kwang Mok, it was a day like any other. He sat chanting scriptures on the wooden platform in front of the house. The old man watched in silence. The Buddhist scripture. His hand followed each red sandalwood bead on the rosary. Truong Kan once again peeked at him intently, through the small crack in the door. He watched Kwang Mok's actions with curiosity. What is the old master doing out there? Fingering his prayer beads. Could it be that he's chanting scriptures like other monks? Thinking this, Truong Kan slipped on his shoes and went out to ask, Master, are you chanting scriptures? If you're chanting, you should be striking the wooden fish and reading aloud. I really like listening to the monks chant. Kwang Mok was profound and unpredictable, saying in a remote place like this, what difference does it make if I read aloud or strike the wooden fish? He patiently explained to the boy, read with your eyes, and strike the wooden fish in your heart. Even so, Truong Kan was still innocent and said whatever he thought. But no matter how I look at it, it seems strange. Kwang Mok lost his patience, frowning as he asked, you're telling me to chant louder? He was implicitly hinting he did not want to be bothered by Truong Kan. If you enjoy hearing it, will I become enlightened and attain the way any faster? Reading aloud and striking the wooden fish only makes you hungrier. It doesn't bring any more enlightenment. When the boy heard this, his good impression of Kwang Mok dropped even further. As expected, he's unbelievably stingy. He's afraid of eating too much, so he chants silently. The old man didn't care what he thought. His hand was still turning the pages of the Buddhist scripture. Don't disturb my meditation, go inside. Hearing that Truong Kan didn't bother him anymore, he sulked back into the house alone, his heart filled with an unavoidable bit of frustration. He only dared to grumble to himself, I get scolded for everything I say. He just says the same thing over and over. His arm sliding the door shut paused, as if an idea struck him. Interesting, Truong Kan stopped his movement. An idea suddenly flashed in his mind. At least if I do what the master does, I won't get scolded. And there was a good reason I got scolded. Having cleared his thoughts, Truong Kan closed the door again. He quietly made up his mind. All right, I'll just wait and see. He had somewhat grasped the secret to survival here. I will observe. See how the master restricts his movements without getting hungry, and then copy him. The next morning, just as the sky began to brighten, a few rays of sunlight were still peeking through. The Chu Lam Tu was already lit up and awake early. The sounds of daily life from the disciples and monks showed the disciplined and orderly lifestyle here. Some Tu Lam disciples were sweeping, while others clasped their hands to greet the abbots. At Kwang Mok's small, isolated house on the mountain, it seemed to still be shrouded in silence. But he was already up early, neatly folding his blanket. Truong Kan was also woken up. He watched Kwang Mok's movements as he folded the blanket, filled with admiration. What was that? The master made his bed in the blink of an eye. Seeing that he was awake, the master was also surprised. Why are you up so early today? But Kwang Mok didn't pay it much mind. Since you're up, hurry and make your bed. Truong Kan obediently did as he was told. He watched Kwang Mok's figure disappear and wondered to himself, it's not even light out yet. Where is the master going in such a hurry? He hurriedly folded his blankets, with only a single thought in his mind. I have to follow him. Unfortunately, the pile of blankets he folded was rather crooked and messy, neither as fast nor as neat as Kwang Mok's. Recalling the master's movements, Truong Kan felt embarrassed. There's no way I can be as fast and neat as the master. Is this also a way to restrict movement? He decided to leave it for later practice. For now, he had to go. He quickly started walking in Kwang Mok's direction. The master walked leisurely along the path, his expression calm. At this moment, he truly looked like a Zen master. The simple and tranquil scene was promptly disrupted by the tiny Truong Kan scurrying along behind him, ruining the atmosphere. He hid behind a tree, peeking his head out like a detective tracking a suspect. He saw Kwang Mok begin to set foot on a towering cliff face. His steps were firm as he launched from the slab of rock that was jagged at the base of the cliff. Then Kwang Mok's figure moved lightly, gracefully as if he had wings, using a speed so fast it was hard to see with the naked eye. He stood firmly on the cliff. He landed gently on the high cliff, but made no loud noise at all. Truong-kan, hiding, saw this scene with his eyes wide and his jaw dropped. What was that just now? He quickly hid behind the tree again, silently marveling at how easily he climbed up. This really is Tiu Lam Tu? Suddenly he saw Kwang Mok sit cross-legged on the ledge. He was confused to see him meditating here. Does the old master start every day like this? He decided to copy every single move of Kwang Mok. All right, then I'll meditate too. Truong-kan decisively sat cross-legged and prepared to meditate. Kwang Mok paid him no mind and immediately began meditating. Truong-kan silently vowed he would definitely find the secret to restrict Kwang Mok's movements so that he could get a full meal. The sky had completely brightened. The disciples in Tiu Lam Tu were diligently practicing martial arts. The abbots and masters of Tiu Lam were chanting scriptures. At Kwang Mok and Truong-kan's spot, he realized, the old master had not moved an inch since. It must have been over 2 hours. Truong-kan was suspicious. Could the old master be dozing off? He opened one eye to look in his direction. He told me not to sleep, but here he is dozing off. The sound of his stomach rumbling from hunger rang out, breaking the silent atmosphere. He himself was startled. Truong-kan did not want his growling stomach to attract his master's attention, but the rumbling sound had already echoed loudly. Kwang Mok did not bother to open his eyes, nor did he turn his head. He just flatly asked, "Are you protesting against me?" Truong-kan jumped startled at being discovered. He quickly denied it. "Protest what, sir? Not at all." Kwang Mok continued his sharp critique. "If you are going to follow me in secret, you should at least be quiet. Why are you making that rumbling noise and disturbing my meditation?" Truong-kan ran to the front of the cliff, looking up at him to explain, "What can I do when I am hungry?" Kwang Mok did not want to argue anymore. He sighed in annoyance and opened his eyes. There was no peace even for meditation. Just as he finished speaking, a stream of white air was inhaled into his body. Seeing this scene made Truong-kan even more confused. What is that white thing from the master's mouth? It came out of his mouth and went back in through his nose. Seeing the boy's face full of curiosity, Kwang Mok felt a bit helpless. He realized all children were like this. He looked down at Truong-kan, who was staring at him inquisitively. "But I am not your master, so why should I have to explain everything?" The words of refusal had barely formed when he met the innocent, shimmering eyes of Truong-kan. Kwang Mok's heart softened and he sighed. "Never mind. I will not teach the mental art, but the practice of cultivation itself is not a secret." He still patiently explained to Truong-kan, "The mental art I am practicing is a secret internal skill, passed down to only a select few in Tiu Lam, called Dik Kan Kin." Kwang Mok had a deep understanding of the mental art, so his explanation was easy to understand. "What you saw is Ki, the origin and principle of all things." Truong-kan was too young to fully understand. He guessed naively as Ki like smoke. Kwang Mok looked up at the sky above, looking profound and mysterious. Qi exists everywhere in the world. Absorbing qi into the body helps people become healthy and full of vitality. Truong-kan was quick to catch on. He figured it out. No wonder his master didn't feel hungry. It turns out his master was eating qi. Kwang Mok began to explain. He explained it all in great detail. Once you master it, you can absorb qi with your entire body. The qi that accumulates in the body is the internal energy of martial artists. Truong-kan nodded excitedly again and again, so that's how it worked. But all he could think about was eating qi to stop being hungry. He was determined and set a new goal for himself. "I have to secretly practice how to eat qi too. Then I can smugly tell my master that I'm not hungry anymore." Kwang Mok cleared his throat, bringing Truong-kan's attention back to him. He was clearly soft-hearted, but he tried to sound strict. "You can sit next to me while I do my morning training, but you are absolutely not to disturb me, understand?" Truong-kan had just learned a survival secret against hunger, so he obediently replied yes. Then he went back to his spot. Kwang Mok's eyes followed the small figure. As the boy walked away, he thought to himself, "No more questions now are there." He felt like he hadn't explained enough. "I was even going to teach you the art of immortality. If you had just asked one more question." Meanwhile, Truong-kan had just found his key to surviving hunger. It was like he had struck gold. He sat in serious contemplation. His small fists were clenched in deep thought. "How do I eat the qi from the air?" Truong Khan's back was perfectly straight. He meditated with great seriousness. He set a goal for himself: I will definitely learn to eat qi. Light shone down from the peak of the mountain, where Kwang Mok was meditating and cultivating his spirit. After meditating for a while, he raised his head and let out a long breath. That's enough for today. Kwang Mok slowly placed his hands on his knees to stand up. After meditating for a while, he raised his head and let out a long breath. That's enough for today. Kwang Mok slowly placed his hands on his knees to stand up. He looked toward Truong Khan, who was still meditating motionlessly behind the tree. Kwang Mok said nothing, but was silently assessing the new disciple. He could not even last 15 minutes before he started to struggle. Truong Khan breathed evenly and tried to focus, but his legs were still trembling. Kwang Mok chuckled to himself. You seem very persistent. He led Truong Khan, who was trembling from his numb legs, toward a house in the middle of the forest. Truong Khan had difficulty walking, but he was still in awe. How is Master so unaffected? Aren't his legs numb at all? Truong Khan gaped at the way Kwang Mok walked. He was moving slowly, but it was as if he was gliding. Although Kwang Mok appeared to be moving slowly, it felt as though he was gliding effortlessly. Truong Khan suddenly thought he was a ghost, and his face turned pale, completely drained of color. Noticing the boy was walking slowly, Kwang Mok urged him to speed up. Stop dawdling and follow me. Seeing his strange way of walking, Truong Khan instinctively stopped to observe. He looked curiously at Kwang Mok's shoulders. His master walked with almost no movement in his shoulders, and his arms didn't swing. Then he looked down at his master's feet as he walked. They were nimble, gliding lightly over the ground. Truong Khan suddenly realized, so that's how it is to avoid getting hungry. His master was minimizing his movements as much as possible. At that moment, his heart was filled with nothing but admiration and deep respect. So impressive, his master walks in a way that conserves all his energy. The two of them quickly arrived at the house, a cottage with a thatched roof. The two of them ate their meal together. As he ate, Truong Khan watched Kwang Mok. He had not paid attention before, but now he noticed. He continued to eat, oblivious to Truong Khan's subtle actions. He looked at Kwang Mok's bowl in surprise. All of his everyday movements were incredibly efficient. There was no wasted motion at all. So different from the servants at home who are always so busy. It's like the master calculates everything before he even moves. It was then that Kwang Mok noticed Truong Khan, who wasn't eating and was just lost in his thoughts. He sternly corrected Truong Khan, causing the boy to awkwardly obey. When you eat, focus on eating. Truong Khan obediently followed his master's words and focused on his meal. Kwang Mok figured it out. This kid has been following me since early this morning, observing my every move. Is he trying to imitate me? After eating, Kwang Mok took a book and placed it on the table to read. Truong Khan also copied him taking out a book to read. He clicked his tongue and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. So he's not even trying to hide it now. What is he thinking? Kwang Mok gave a light cough and decided to ask him a question. Truong, are you reading the works of the sages? The book you're holding is the Bon Muoi Hai Chuang Kin, although it's not too difficult. An 8-year-old child can't read it on his own. Truong Khan scratched his head. I've already finished the Tien Tu Van, sir. I'm still in the middle of learning Luan Ngu and Mantu. Just as you said, master. This scripture is too difficult. I can't read it. Kwang Mok was silent for a moment, then spoke. You are not a Buddhist, and you have no intention of becoming a monk, so is there a need to read Buddhist scriptures? Khan replied quickly. That's right, sir. Kwang Mok didn't quite believe the boy's words, even though he had answered so clearly. He raised an eyebrow and then suddenly remembered. Then again, it's not like there's anything else to read here. Kwang Mok sighed to himself. How troublesome. I'll probably have to find the Tu Thu Ngu Kin for him to read. But then he reconsidered. No. Why should I have to do that? When will he finally get bored and leave this mountain? After reading for a while, Truong can put the book away with difficulty. His legs were trembling from being numb. He placed a hand on his stomach, feeling it. But perhaps because he wasn't running around, he felt less hungry. Truong Khan suddenly remembered something, so he looked out into the courtyard and asked Kwang Mok, Are you resting now, master? Truong Khan's eyes widened, unable to hide his surprise, and he wondered, what are you doing now? He went out into the courtyard and saw Kwang Mok in a training stance. He clasped his hands, deeply focused. His eyes shut as he breathed deeply and steadily. Kwang Mok raised his right hand high, his hand seeming to glide up gracefully. Then he lowered his left hand, gliding it down just as gently. Seeing this, Truong Kan immediately started to imitate him. Kwang Mok opened his eyes, seeming to have noticed the boy. His eyes widened in surprise. This too. Now I get it. He has nothing to do, so he copies me all day long. Truong Kan grinned brightly, happily following along. He watched every single one of Kwang Mok's movements intently. He thought to himself, all right, let's give it a try. Then Kwang Mok switched to another movement, gently holding a defensive stance while pushing out a palm strike. But Truong Kan's hands and feet were clumsy. Then he switched again, to another movement more difficult than the last, doing it gracefully. Truong Kan pursed his lips and froze. He never expected this movement to be harder than the last one. He fumbled his arms and legs, waving in the air, a panicked look on his face. Truong Kan was still struggling with the movement. This is harder than I thought. The master's movements are too slow, I can't copy them. He lost his balance, his hands flailing in panic with nothing to grab onto, and he fell backward. Truong Kan fell to the ground with a thud, his arms and legs in the air. He cried out in pain. Kwang Mok didn't help him up, but he chuckled to himself. It's not that easy. Kien then Dong Kong is not something you can do just by imitating. He ignored the boy and continued his practice. You must practice Dich Ken Kin to a certain level. Only then can you practice it. In the middle of the forest, only the sound of Zhang Jin's panting could be heard. The boy then questioned him. But master, you said that exercising a lot makes you hungry. Kwang Mok replied, how could training the body be useless? If a person doesn't move, their body becomes sluggish. He explained further. Movement helps qi and blood to circulate, keeping the body healthy. Zhang Jin asked again, then why are you moving so slowly, master? The boy couldn't imitate him, and the old man just chuckled to himself. You can't surpass me. Although you are trying very hard, I cannot teach you Shaolin martial arts. Kwang Mok performed another movement more difficult than the previous ones. His hand movements were like a cat scratching in front of its chest. He took a step forward and continued to explain. I'm not just simply moving slowly. I am also focusing my mind to observe my body. The slower you are, the easier it is to observe inside your body. Zhang Jin didn't quite understand these words. Observe inside the body. Kwang Mok nodded. Observe which muscles are working when you take a step, how your hands move, what your breathing is like. Zhang Jin frowned, looking confused, and asked him again. But why do we have to observe it? Kwang Mok did not answer immediately, but thought to himself, you sure ask a lot of questions. He brought his movement to a close, finishing his training session. Much to Zhang Jin's surprise, Kwang Mok explained, the human body is very complex. Hundreds of bones, thousands of blood vessels and muscles. And the Qijing Ba Mai, all of it is interwoven. Zhang Jin touched his stomach. Are there really that many? No wonder so many things are moving inside my body. That must be why I'm hungry. Kwang Mok calmly continued. Now think about this. How do you use the least amount of effort for maximum efficiency? He turned his back, leaving him with a piece of advice. Eliminate all unnecessary movements and focus your energy where it's needed most. Kwang Mok calmly took one step after another, slowly making his way into the house. His body moved as if gliding, allowing him to do more with less effort. Hearing these words, Truong Kan suddenly remembered. Little effort for great results. That was what his father always said. He recalled the words of Truong Dao Dan. A merchant must invest little and profit much. That is what makes a true merchant. Truong Kan was silently sure, since they both said the same thing. It had to be more than a coincidence. After speaking, Kwang Mok let out a quiet sigh. I suddenly feel a sense of relief. Truong Kan declared with firm resolve. Even though I don't know how to do it yet, I will do my best. Kwang Mok was surprised at how tenacious the boy was, to have come this far and still not be crying to go down the mountain. Truong Kan trained stumbling and falling repeatedly. Kwang Mok thought, seeing him try so hard like this, if he asked to go down the mountain, I will secretly teach him a few moves and then send him on his way. At Tu Lam Tu Ban Son, the scene was truly peaceful. Red maple leaves drifted all around. In this vast place, a young monk stood before the provision storehouse. The young monk held the ledger, examining it several times, and scratched his head in confusion. This is strange. The figures in the ledger and the amount of provisions match up perfectly. So why are the numbers so low this year? I am sure we received more rice the year before last. The young monk next to him chimed in. They say we had more pilgrims this summer, but the offerings were smaller, the young monk said worriedly. But the rice offerings from the lay disciples should be arriving soon, the other one replied. This year's offerings are only half of last year's. The young monk wondered, is something wrong? The other person's voice lowered. I hear their situation isn't very good. His face tense, turning grim and sad. Expenses in other areas have also increased. It's really worrisome. He looked at the pile of provisions in the storehouse and sighed. Next year is probably going to be very difficult. The young monk didn't understand how strange. It's like water leaking from a jar. The money just disappears. Meanwhile, over at Kwang Mok's house, snow had covered the roof. Kwang Mok was still sitting and reading the scriptures, a string of prayer beads in his hand, while Truong Khan was huddled under a blanket from the cold. He lay shivering uncontrollably under the thin blanket. He could barely open his eyes. This winter is so cold, isn't it? Truong Khan remembered what it was like back home. At home, it was so hot I would be sweating. This is just too much. He secretly glanced at Kwang Mok and thought to himself, it's this cold, and he won't even start a fire in the room. He won't even give me a padded coat. Kwang Mok finally noticed Truong Khan, shivering from the cold beside him. Kwang Mok wondered to himself, I didn't start a fire in the room. If it's this freezing, he should be begging to go down the mountain, right? Why is he so quiet? Truong Khan sneezed a few times. Kwang Mok started to worry. This is bad if I just leave him like this. The kid is going to freeze to death. He didn't hesitate. He put the prayer beads on the table, then used one hand to push off the floor, and the other on his knee to stand up. Kwang Mok quickly rushed out the door. I need to check on the heater that hasn't been used in a while. It was getting colder and colder. Truong Khan's body began to shake more violently. His lips were dry and cracked. He started talking nonsense, Mother, I'll study hard. Don't leave me. Outside, the snow continued to fall relentlessly against the walls of the house. The heater was working. The fire crackled fiercely, as if fighting back against this cold blizzard. Kwang Mok wrung out a wet towel to care for Truong Khan, feeling a bit resentful in his heart. Come to think of it, this was all senior brother Puong Truong's fault. He knew what I was like, yet he still gave the child to me, and a troublesome child at that. Truong Khan's face was pale, and he was coughing violently. Kwang Mok was worried, but it was strange. The room was warm, yet his cough was getting worse, and his fever wasn't going down. Should I go down the mountain and ask for some medicine? No, they would definitely ask questions, like why I didn't take proper care of the child. But when he looked at Truong Khan's condition again, he hesitated for a moment. But if he just let this continue, Truong Khan's fever wouldn't break and his cough would only get worse. On top of that, he was deliriously calling for his mother in his fever. Kwang Mok knew this situation wasn't good. These wretched things are causing me so much trouble. He then immediately pulled off the thin blanket, decisively and without hesitation. Kwang Mok quickly took off the shirt Truong Khan was wearing, which was drenched in sweat. He helped Truong Khan sit up, with his back facing him, telling him to stay awake and not to move. Truong Khan looked like he was in agony, his face growing paler by the second. Kwang Mok placed both hands on his back, having made up his mind. For now I have no choice but to transfer my Noi Kong to him. He began to channel his energy, focusing with absolute concentration. Streams of power gathered in one place. Kwang Mok knew very well that losing his Noi Kong meant losing several years of cultivation. His Noi Kong began to transfer into Truong Khan, concentrating mainly in his abdomen. This flow of Noi Kong radiated outwards, its white light filling the entire room. Kwang Mok had to adjust it himself, because the boy had not yet learned the Noi Kong Tom Fop, so his pressure points are not fully open yet. It is impossible to use energy circulation techniques to clear the meridians. The only way is to use external force to strike his pressure points to clear them. Kwang Mok pressed his hand harder against Truong Khan's back. The amount of internal energy being transferred also increased. He was also pushing himself. As long as he receives 15 years of Dichkin Kin internal energy, even an ordinary person can become healthy and strong. It is like drinking a powerful tonic from the Tio Lam sect. As Truong Khan received such a massive surge of internal energy, he screamed out in agony. It forced him to sit bolt upright, and the surge of power enveloped them both. Kwang Mok breathed out. The problem is it will be difficult for him to cultivate in the future any other kind of internal energy cultivation technique. He pressed even harder on Truong Kan's back. The flow of internal energy grew even more powerful. He thought to himself, "You brought this on yourself. Do not blame me for it." As his body received such an immense amount of power, Truong Kan felt the pain grow even more excruciating. His screams were piercing, tearing through the sound of the wind in the blizzard. The sun began to set, but the snow continued to fall relentlessly, though it was lighter than during the day. Kwang Mok sat watch over Truong Kan. "You will not get sick for at least the next 15 years. Even if you get seriously ill or injured, you will recover much faster than an ordinary person. Your body will also be much stronger." Kwang Mok looked at him with a hint of regret. "In exchange, my 15 years of cultivation have gone down the drain." He bit his lip, pretending it was nothing. "I was not planning to practice martial arts anyway. I will just think of it as saving a life." Kwang Mok gently placed a hand on Truong Kan's forehead to check if his fever had broken. Then he took Truong Kan's wrist to check his pulse and check on his condition. Kwang Mok was lost in thought. "I have been neglecting him all this time, and now he is so thin. He was so chubby when he first came to the mountain. Why do children have to suffer like this?" He suddenly realized he had been thinking and worrying about unnecessary things. Kwang Mok let out a cold snort. "I have already renounced the mortal world to focus on my cultivation. So why do I feel this sense of pity now?" He looked at Truong Kan, sleeping peacefully, his face no longer twisted in pain like before. Kwang Mok mused, "One grows soft-hearted with age. Now I understand why a master would sacrifice his life for his disciple." He turned his face away, his expression remaining calm. If someone else were taking care of him, he would surely be spoiled. Kwang Mok sat down, bringing his hands together to chant Buddhist scriptures. He told himself, "I must understand the suffering of all living beings, to be able to eliminate worldly afflictions. Is this the path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught?" Kwang Mok began to sit and focus on chanting scriptures to gain understanding. Meanwhile, Truong Kan was still asleep, not yet awake, but his face was more relaxed than before. On the morning of the third day, the snow had stopped falling and had melted a little. Truong Kan's voice echoed from inside the house. "Master, you're back." Seeing that he was awake, Kwang Mok casually asked, "You're awake?" Truong Kan asked him excitedly, "How long was I asleep?" "I feel so much better after sleeping. My cold is gone." He felt all over his body, unable to hide his joy. "My whole body feels refreshed, and my mind is clearer." Kwang Mok stared blankly, thinking to himself, does he not remember anything? Well, he's still young. He can't yet recognize the changes in his body. Truong Kan felt healthier after the fever, joy appearing in his eyes. Snow still lightly covered the treetops, with a hazy mist enveloping everything. Kwang Mok and Truong Kan each sat meditating in a corner on the rocks. Truong Kan felt joyful. "How strange the morning air is this cold, but I don't feel cold at all. It was too cold before, so I couldn't concentrate. I can definitely do it today. I will absorb a lot of Qi." Kwang Mok saw him cultivating and thought to himself, "This child has not been tainted by many stray thoughts." When I opened his acupoints for him, most of them were cleared. It was called opening his acupoints, but it was really like being bathed in a stream of pure Qi. This is something others would have to spend a fortune to do. Truong Kan remained focused on his cultivation, not noticing the old man's watchful eyes. "I've unintentionally created a great opportunity for him." Truong Kan took a deep breath, a stream of cold air entering his nose. Then he let out a long breath, gently through his mouth. Truong Kan muttered to himself, placing his hands on his knees, palms facing the sky. Inhale slowly through the nose. He remembered as he did it. Exhaling through the mouth should only take 80% of the time. Inhale very slowly. The two of them continued to cultivate separately until the sun had risen a little. Thoughts swirled in Kwang Mok's mind. If I taught him martial arts now, he might become a great master. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then stopped, calming himself down. Kwang Mok regulated the qi in his body to focus on his cultivation. A few days later at the old training spot, Truong Kan was meditating alone. Suddenly, his stomach started to throb relentlessly, leaving him confused. Truong Kan looked down at his stomach in surprise. "Why do I feel a slight sting in my nose and stomach when I inhale?" He could feel the streams of qi inside his stomach. Is this the feeling of absorbing qi? Truong Khan drew qi into his mouth, smiling to himself triumphantly. Imitating the old master really paid off. He slowly took in mouthful after mouthful deliberately and with satisfaction. I can absorb qi now too. Time to get my fill. The sun peeked through, shining on him. Kwang Mok was standing on a high rock. He looked at Truong Khan, wondering, why does he look so happy? Today, while he was training, I sensed a few strange flows of qi. Kwang Mok made a guess, then fell silent. Could he have learned how to regulate his breathing? He immediately jumped down. No way how could he do it on his own without ever being taught. It must be because the internal energy of Dishkan Kin has spread throughout his body, making him more sensitive to qi. As soon as he landed, Kwang Mok felt his body become heavy. He wore a confused and slightly bewildered expression. Kwang Mok stood there bewildered, looking at his own hands. My body feels so heavy, I'm not used to this at all. He could only click his tongue to think that I've ended up in this state. It's all because this guy is so unlucky, Kwang Mok pretended, as if nothing had happened, and walked past Truong Khan. Well, time to go down the mountain. Truong Khan suddenly noticed and called out to Kwang Mok, wait a moment. It made him grit his teeth. Truong Khan was afraid he would be abandoned. A look of fear appeared on his face. Kwang Mok continued to walk slowly. So Truong Khan hurriedly ran after him. Back at the house, the snow on Kwang Mok's thatched roof was now gone. Truong Khan trained in the yard, silently rejoicing. This is amazing. So this is what it feels like to observe the inside of my body. He raised his hands high as he practiced. I can even feel every single hair move in the wind. He thought to himself, he looks so different today. Is it because the internal energy of Dishkan Kin has spread through his body? Kwang Mok explained. Dishkan Kin has the effect of improving your tendons and bones, making them suitable for martial arts training. If you master Dishkan Kin and then learn Thieu Lam martial arts, your body will become tougher and stronger. But you are not a martial artist, so you don't need to try so hard. Model, Truong Khan replied happily. As long as I am not hungry, that is enough. Truong Khan giggled innocently, because what he wanted was quite simple. Kwang Mok was rather surprised. This kid was training so hard just to avoid going hungry. What? With that kind of willpower, the Dishkan Kin internal energy might actually work. At this rate, it might even change his constitution, Kwang Mok thought to himself. Then his face paled as he secretly glanced at Truong Khan. The next day the air was still cold, but it was fresher in the mountains. In a corner of the forest, flowers bloomed one after another, attracting a swarm of butterflies. As for Kwang Mok and Truong Khan, they were sitting on a bed in the courtyard reading books. After that, Truong Khan went out to the garden, his hands getting dirty as he pulled up vegetables. Then he went to pick the mulberries, bright red in the neighboring garden. Truong Khan then happily ate the two things he had just picked. When the season came for the leaves to dry and fall, the master and disciple still sat reading books in the courtyard. After that, Truong Khan continued to practice. The martial arts he had been learning for so long, he diligently went from one move to the next, without giving up. By the end of the year, on a snowy winter day, the master and disciple were still sitting and cultivating. Truong Khan's lips were trembling, not from the cold, like on previous days, but because he was breathing in the surrounding air and regulating his body, calmly cultivating. Truong Khan happily opened his eyes and smiled, because he had made some progress. White snow continued to fall day after day, covering the entire mountain. The weather turned to spring. The sun came out, making the green trees grow lush and verdant. 3 years later, Kim-O suddenly appeared in front of the Thieu Lam Tu. He stood before the entrance of Thieu Lam Tu with some excitement. Wonder how that boy is doing. 2 young monks came out to greet him. Welcome, great master, what brings you here? Kim-O clasped his hands and greeted them back. I have come to visit an old friend. One of the young monks spoke up and asked, what is the Grand Master's Dharma name? Kim-O answered the young monk's question. His Dharma name is Kwang Van. The 2 young monks were surprised. They thought to themselves, an old friend of the abbot. Then he must be no ordinary guest. The 2 hurriedly said, this way, Grand Master. I will send for someone to announce your arrival, and in the meantime I will attend to you. The other young monk went ahead to open the door. The one who remained showed him the way inside. Kim-O took 1 step at a time. Slowly and gently he ascended the stairs. At the door he followed the 2 young monks. neither too fast nor too slow. As he was walking, Kim-O raised his head to look at something up high. When he saw it, his eyes widened in shock. "Kim-O," asked the young monk, "why is this pagoda so neglected? Why haven't these pagodas been repaired?" One of the young monks bowed his head and explained, "It's not that we haven't tried to repair it. It's that we've already repaired it many times." Kim-O suddenly blurted out, "Do you mean to say that the Shaolin Temple's finances are in great difficulty?" The two young monks led Kim-O inside to meet Kwang Van. He also told Kim-O that the Shaolin Temple has been facing hardship lately. "I should be treating an old friend to fine tea, but the good tea must be reserved for pilgrims, so we must settle for this lower-grade tea." Kwang Van looked into his teacup, his eyes dull and sorrowful. "And we're about to run out of this tea, too." Kim-O's eyes widened in astonishment. He stared at Kwang Van at a loss for words. He felt a sense of dread. Why does Kwang Van look so gaunt? Moreover, in the past, no matter how poor he was, Kwang Van would never be stingy with good tea. Kim-O remembered the pagoda from earlier. So he asked, "The fact that the prayer halls and pagodas haven't been repaired, is that also due to financial difficulties, model?" He only said that much before his voice trailed off. Kwang Van gently blew on his hot tea. He set the teacup down. "The thing is, we have to make repairs time and time again. One section collapses after another. We just can't keep up anymore." Hearing this, Kim-O let out a surprised grunt. Kwang Van added, "The outer areas still have to be maintained because of the many pilgrims." His voice dropped again. "But the inner sections have been almost completely abandoned for 3 years now." Hearing this, Kim-O's eyes widened as if he had just realized something. 3 whole years. Could it be? Kwang Van led Kim-O on a walk through Tiu Lam Tu. Kim-O recalled, "It has also been 3 years since he brought Truong Khan to Tiu Lam Tu. But so what if the child's fate is to bring ruin to his house? This is the great Tiu Lam Tu after all." It's not like he was officially initiated into the sect. He was just being fostered here. How could Tiu Lam Tu possibly fall into ruin? He secretly glanced at Kwang Van beside him. Then he reassured himself. The two of them walked around, but they didn't say much, making the atmosphere rather quiet. Kim-O finally broke the silence, asking, "Is there anything I can do to help? Although a monk should not speak of money, if you need funds, I can ask Hue Vien Tu for assistance." Kwang Van, though grateful, politely declined. He then explained, "But the temple's fields yield a harvest every year, so we don't have to worry about food and clothing." Those words struck Kim-O like a bolt of lightning. The color drained from his face. He pressed his lips together, speechless. But inside his thoughts were in turmoil. Bountiful harvests. What isn't this the exact omen from that child's horoscope? Everything he undertakes goes smoothly, but his expenses are even greater, so it's like pouring water into a bottomless pit. Kim-O turned to leave, saying, "Namo Amitabha Buddha." Kwang Van was confused. "Why are you leaving already?" Kim-O replied curtly, "No, I am going to the prayer hall." Kwang Van didn't understand what he was doing at the Buddha hall. Kim-O replied seriously, "What else can I do but pray for the Shaolin Temple?" Surprised, Kwang Van leaned back. "Why would you pray for the Shaolin Temple?" Kim-O didn't reply, his brow furrowing slightly. He blamed himself inwardly. "I feel like this is all my fault. My heart is too heavy. I can't just go back like this." Kwang Van tried to stop him. "You're getting on in years. How can I bear to let you tire yourself out at another temple? I appreciate your good intentions." But Kim-O was still determined to leave. He watched as Kim-O silently departed. He couldn't understand, muttering to himself, "Why is he suddenly acting like this?" Kim-O arrived at the Buddha hall. The place was quiet, serene, and well kept. He bowed his head, preparing to kowtow in the Buddha hall, before the Buddha statue. Kim-O's mind was filled with thoughts. Even if I have the fate of a Fajia Chitu, surely it wouldn't be enough to cause the downfall of the entire Shaolin Temple, right? He bowed deeply, praying for a long time with great sincerity. After a while, Kim-O slowly drew his legs in, preparing to stand. He kept his head bowed before the statue above him. He tried to reassure himself it must be a coincidence. The cast face of the Buddha statue looked as if it understood everything. Kim-O repeated the prayer motions many times. After some time, he returned to Kwang Van. He ran out asking worriedly, "You're here again. It's been years. If you keep this up, you'll collapse from exhaustion. You must take care of your health. You're not young enough to endure such arduous travel anymore." Kimo remained silent, ignoring his words. He changed the subject. Has the situation not improved this year? Kwang Van said firmly. However, that has nothing to do with you. Kimo put his palms together. Namo Amitabha Buddha. In his heart there was nothing but a sigh. It has been 4 years, it must be, because I am not sincere enough. Kimo slipped past Kwang Van to go inside. I will be going now. Kwang Van wanted to stop him but could do nothing. He could only stand there and sigh, along with the 2 young monks beside him. They were also unable to stop him. A young monk remarked, but thanks to Master Kimo, the atmosphere in the temple has changed a lot. Several young monks have volunteered to perform 10,000 prostrations together. Kwang Van looked at Kimo and his profound gaze was filled with gratitude. He turned to look at the 2 young monks. We have received a great favor from our friend, so we must also try our best. We must not let our friend have to come again next year. The 2 young monks quickly agreed in unison. Meanwhile, in the forest at Kwang Mok's house, his voice suddenly rang out. What is this? His forehead wrinkled, his eyebrows raised, showing his confusion. Truong Kan now looked more mature and calmer than before. Kwang Mok looked at the table of food and stammered. What is this? Truong Kan was puzzled. It's breakfast. Kwang Mok stared at each dish, lost in thought. At a glance, it did not look any different from usual. This made him even more worried. But the chopsticks and bowls were arranged with a frightening neatness. Kwang Mok looked at the vegetables on the tray arranged so neatly. And the food in the bowl, too. He hesitated for a moment, then pointed at the plate of vegetables and asked, What is this? Truong Kan did not see anything unusual, so he answered naturally, It is the purslane I picked from the garden. Kwang Mok suddenly roared in anger. I am asking why you or no. Why are you being so meticulous? Truong Kan was silent for a moment, then looked at the plate of vegetables he had arranged. He answered naturally, Do you think doing this makes it look more appetizing? He smiled gently and innocently. I just removed the inedible parts and the worm-eaten bits. Kwang Mok snorted. I guess that is a talent of sorts. Even the grains of rice have to be lined up. Are you that bored? Truong Kan explained. You just have to be a little skillful. I find it more convenient this way. Kwang Mok immediately questioned him. No wonder I have had indigestion lately. How can anyone eat when everything is arranged so neatly? Not one to back down? Truong Kan replied. Arranging things neatly like this is what is natural. The master said so too. He rambled on, giving Kwang Mok a headache. There you go again. Ever since we first met, you have been saying the strangest things. After a short while, from listening to Truong Kan's constant nagging, Kwang Mok held up his hand. All right, fine. Just eat, he mumbled as he picked up his rice bowl. I do not want to argue with you today. Truong Kan also fell silent, but he smiled, quite pleased with himself. After the meal, Kwang Mok stood outside looking up in thought. He felt a sense of unease in his heart that he could not understand. How strange what is happening. It must be because Teo Lam Tu is having financial difficulties lately. That is why the temple is in such turmoil. No, that is not it. In the quiet forest, there was only the sound of Kwang Mok's frantic footsteps. He paced back and forth restlessly in the courtyard. Why do I have such an indescribable sense of unease? Thoughts raced endlessly through Kwang Mok's mind. Every day is the same as the last. Why do I feel so anxious? His expression darkened, constantly tense. He let out a deep sigh. Kwang Mok stopped in front of his house. The discomfort in his heart grew stronger and stronger. It is so suffocating. What is this feeling? Truong Kan cautiously watched Kwang Mok standing in the yard with a questioning look. He also didn't understand what was happening and mumbled to himself. What's wrong with Master now? Is something bothering him? Kwang Mok stepped into the room. He saw that the bookshelf was neatly arranged, and even the blankets and pillows were tidied up immaculately. He now understood why he was feeling so uncomfortable. This kid is going to be the death of me. Kwang Mok froze on the spot. He had finally found the reason. This isn't just neatness, it's an obsession. He tensed up and glanced over toward Truong Kan outside. Kwang Mok had to squint through the slightly open door and saw Truong Kan cheerfully sweeping leaves in the yard. Truong Kan has been acting very strange lately. We've lived together for 7 years, and I've never seen him be lazy. He will surely accomplish great things. Kwang Mok was sitting in the garden picking vegetables when he heard the sound of quick footsteps. He sensed it stopped what he was doing and lifted his head to look. Kwang Mok saw Truong Kan gliding along, sweeping the leaves both quickly and lightly. He was astonished. What kind of footwork is that? Kwang Mok couldn't help but be amazed as he observed him in detail. His feet glided lightly over the ground. His shoulders barely moved. Although it was a bit clumsy, it was very clean overall. There was not a single wasted movement. I know he's imitating my footwork, but I have no idea when it became like this. Fat on Denbo. You need to use internal energy to perform it. Still without an answer, he decided to call Truong Kan over. The boy walked over and asked, "What is it, master?" His mind was filled with thoughts. I have never taught Truong Kan any martial arts. If other people find out, they will say he stole Shaolin's martial arts. Kwang Mok asked bluntly, "What was that footwork?" Truong Kan looked blank, as if he did not understand. "My footwork, you mean?" Then he suddenly understood. "You notice, master. I can finally do it just like you, master." A look of surprise appeared in Kwang Mok's eyes. He really had learned a martial art, just by imitating. He thought back to before. Impossible, he is just an ordinary kid. He does not have that kind of talent. Kwang Mok then recalled the time Truong Kan was clutching his stomach. He does not even know what qi is, so he definitely does not know any martial arts. He then remembered the days Truong Kan would look clueless, not understanding what martial arts even were. Pushing those memories aside, Kwang Mok asked him, "Since when?" Truong Kan repeated the question, "Since when?" He explained happily, "I do not think I could do it a few days ago, but suddenly today I could, and I have not been feeling hungry lately either." Kwang Mok could not believe what he was hearing. He hurriedly asked again. Truong Kan simply repeated what the master had said before. "You said it yourself, master. If you do not want to be hungry, do not make any unnecessary movements." He thought back on his training with pride. "I really did try my best. I was always thinking about how to use the least amount of effort to achieve the greatest result." Hearing this, Kwang Mok was both surprised and puzzled. Could this really be true? He asked again, "Are you saying you saw me limiting my movements to save energy, and you just imitated me?" Truong Kan answered flustered, "No, that is not it." Kwang Mok was at a loss for words, faced with his words, but Truong Kan just smiled, very confident in what he had accomplished. Kwang Mok then held out his hand and called out, "Truong, can let me see your hand." A huge question mark appeared in his head. He did not understand his master's intention. Truong Kan gave his hand to Kwang Mok, unable to stop wondering. Teacher is so strange today, what is he checking for? Kwang Mok took his hand, then closed his eyes to focus and feel. Streams of white qi flowed around the two of them. Sensed by Kwang Mok, the streams of white qi began to gather around Truong Kan even more. Suddenly, all the white qi converged at his abdomen, startling Kwang Mok. He was shocked, unable to believe the boy had cultivated internal energy, just by sensing his dantian. I can tell he has at least 25 years of internal energy. Kwang Mok's jaw dropped. I never taught him breath control. He also never had time to practice in secret. He looked into those innocent, hopeful eyes, which gave him a headache. So when did he start cultivating internal energy? Kwang Mok let go of his hand, trying to remember. If there was any time, it could only have been when I was practicing in the morning. He questioned him, "How exactly did you practice breath control?" Truong Kan answered quite naively, "You can eat as much qi as you want because it's everywhere." He recalled the process of eating qi, from focusing on breathing the qi in deeply, to eventually getting used to eating qi with his mouth. After many attempts, Truong Kan confidently told Kwang Mok, "I don't know anything else, but I have eaten a lot of qi." Kwang Mok was shaken again, so for the past 7 years, he practiced breath control just by thinking about it like that. It was then that he remembered what happened 7 years ago. When Truong Kan was sick, Kwang Mok realized the Ditchkin Kin internal energy transferred to him had awakened his sensitivity to qi because he had been persistent with his breath control. So he had accidentally cultivated internal energy. Seeing him so quiet, Truong Kan grew worried. "Master, why are you so tense? Is there something wrong with my body?" Kwang Mok calmed himself down. "It's nothing. It's just that the move you just performed was the Fat and Thon Bo footwork of the Tiu Lam. How did you know my movements well enough to copy them?" Truong Kan then described what he saw. "Master, you don't really lift your shoulders when you walk. You just walk on the balls of your feet while looking off into the distance. He didn't just explain, he demonstrated it. My feet started to glide quickly like this. Truong Kan glided swiftly and lightly like a phantom, leaving Kwang Mok staring in astonishment. He watched the boy perform it right before his very eyes. His form was incredibly stable. Kwang Mok gave a wry smile. The corners of his mouth couldn't even manage to curl up. After observing for a moment, he saw that while it looked like Fat An Than Bo, it was different. Fat An Than Bo includes movements, for both evasion and counterattacks. But your footwork isn't used for offense or defense. Instead, it's more like moving toward a destination, using the fewest steps possible, and at the fastest speed. Truong Kan continued to glide around cheerfully and enthusiastically, unwilling to stop. All Kwang Mok could feel now was panic as he sighed to himself. Night fell, making the area around the house much quieter than it was during the day. Truong Kan had already turned his back and fallen asleep before Kwang Mok, looking at the boy's back. He recalled what had happened that morning. Perhaps even among the second-generation disciples of the Teo Lam, it would be rare to find someone with such footwork. Most of the second-generation disciples are in their 20s. Truong Kan's footwork, a boy who was only 15, was no different from theirs, even though it was accidental. It seems that his persistent practice of Kien Than Dong Kong, along with the Dich Kon Kin internal art, has changed his physical constitution. Kwang Mok prepared to go to sleep. He should blow out the candle on the table. But he didn't lie down to sleep. Instead, he immediately looked at Truong Kan once more. An unsettling worry rose in Kwang Mok. There was no problem for now, but it would be dangerous later on. He looked at Truong Kan with a discerning gaze. His thoughts kept piling up. Practicing and using internal energy incorrectly on his own could lead to him losing control of his energy. He looked on conflicted. Should I teach him the proper way to regulate his energy? Even so, I cannot just teach him Teo Lam martial arts on my own. Kwang Mok mumbled something under his breath, and then sighed. Then he looked at the soundly sleeping Truong Kan, contemplating. If I want to teach him, I must get permission from Kwang Van. Kwang Mok sat thinking for a long while, but he still didn't know what to do. How should I bring this up? Outside, the moon was high in the sky. Moonlight shone through the window. From the abbot's quarters in the serene Teo Lam temple, a voice could be heard. Amitabha, what a blessing. Kwang Van stroked his beard thoughtfully. It's not just that the donations from our patrons have returned to normal. Their own hardships are also gradually being resolved. Kwang Tin let go of the worry in his heart. Our finances will stabilize again if the offerings continue to come in. His eyes lit up. Although we haven't fully recovered, it's enough that we won't have to worry for the time being. Kwang Van breathed a sigh of relief. Our expenses were increasing while our finances were dwindling. Now we no longer have to worry like we did these past few years. This is truly wonderful. He fingered his prayer beads thinking of someone. This is all thanks to a friend's benevolence. He had prostrated before the Buddha many times. The Buddha did not forsake our friend's sincerity, Amitabha. Kwang Tin then spoke his mind. Senior brother Abbot. Model. There should not be any more problems this year. I think it is time to discuss this with the abbots. Kwang Van asked in surprise, what is there to discuss? He then explained in detail how most of the lay disciples were facing hardships at the same time. A situation like this is rare, but it is better to be safe than sorry. We must prepare in advance for similar cases. A contingency plan is being proposed. Therefore, we must reduce our spending on relief efforts. To accumulate more wealth for the temple, the smile on Kwang Van's lips vanished after hearing that proposal. He firmly refused. I understand your intentions, brother, but that is unacceptable. Kwang Van thought of the people with a heavy heart. Even if donations are scarce, we can endure hunger, but if we do not provide relief, the people will starve to death. How can we simply turn a blind eye? Kwang Tin never expected the matter to lead to such serious consequences. Kwang Van lectured him with a grave tone. We are monks first and a martial arts sect second. There is no shame in being poor. He immediately felt remorseful. You are absolutely right, Brother Abbot. Please forgive my foolishness. Only then did he reply gently to Kwang Tin's apology. Of course. Kwang Van thoughtfully comforted him. Our devotion to Teo Lam is one and the same. How could I possibly blame you? The scene then shifted elsewhere. In a remote part of the deep mountains, Truong Kan found a place to rest and began to eat. I have gone too far today. I used to be afraid of starving, so I never dared to go this far, but now I have my chi. Eating alone gave him time to think about other things. While eating, Truong Khan suddenly thought of Kwang Mok. But my master has been a bit strange lately, has he not? Kwang Mok shut his eyes tightly as if trying to calm himself. He seems to have become much quieter. Truong Khan found a place to rest and began to eat. I have gone too far today. I used to be afraid of starving, so I never dared to go this far, but now I have my chi. Eating alone gave him time to think about other things. While eating, Truong Khan suddenly thought of Kwang Mok. But my master has been a bit strange lately, has he not? Kwang Mok shut his eyes tightly as if trying to calm himself. He seems to have become much quieter. He suspected something was troubling him. If Lao Su would just say it directly, I wouldn't have to guess. Another apple became his meal. Suddenly, someone approached from behind. What delicious thing are you eating? Startled, Truong Khan turned to face the mysterious voice. Hong Ngo stood imposingly observing him with his hands clasped behind his back. Reacting instinctively, Truong Khan screamed and fell to the ground. Who is this? The mischievous old man watched him fall to the ground. Did I startle you? My apologies. Truong Khan was filled with a mix of alarm and wariness. He looks like a Teo Lam monk, but I couldn't sense anyone approaching at all. He brought his trembling hands before Hong Ngo. He clasped his hands and bowed deeply. Greetings, great master. I am Truong Khan, and I live with Lao Su Kwang Mok. Hong Ngo was a little surprised upon hearing the familiar name. So he asked, you live with Kwang Mok? Truong Khan was also surprised and perceptively realized something. Could it be that you know Kwang Mok, great master? The old man kept the answer to himself. Of course I do. Seeing those baggy monk robes, I could tell you live with Kwang Mok. After a long moment, Hong Ngo replied cryptically, the truth is I have seen you a few times already. Truong Khan shook his head. But I have never met you before, great master. The old man replied calmly. You may not have seen me, but I have seen you. The old man revealed what he knew about Truong Khan. A few days ago you were picking wild fruit on the other side. Hearing this, he was startled. How did you know, great master? The profound Hong Ngo stroked his long beard and explained smugly. I have my ways. A few days ago he had been observing very carefully your movements as you picked fruit. It was the exact hand technique of Long Trao Thu, but it didn't stop there. Your footwork was identical to Fatan Thanbo. Hong Ngo silently sized up Truong Khan. His movements looked like someone who had been formally trained in martial arts. Could it be that Kwang Mok taught you? But Kwang Mok doesn't take on disciples, so why would he? He suddenly became a bit puzzled. Besides, Kwang Mok is a very difficult person. How could you have lived with him for 7 years? It was as if Truong Khan had found someone to vent to. You know it too, great master. My master is very difficult. At first I was always getting scolded, he said in a small voice, although I still get scolded now too. The old man laughed heartily in agreement. That's right, that's just the kind of person Kwang Mok is. Truong can only just remembered. I don't even know this master's identity. Who is this great master to call my master by his name? The old man made no attempt to hide it. He introduced his Dharma name as Hong Ngo. I am the senior brother of Kwang Van, the abbot of the Tu Lam Tu. He also voiced the question he had been wondering about. And are you a disciple of Kwang Mok? Truong Khan answered honestly, no, I am not. I only live with my master. I am not his disciple. There were a few things Hong Ngo couldn't figure out. Just living with him, but not as a disciple. How strange. But just now, you clearly used the Fat An Thanbo technique, Truong Khan answered hesitantly. Master Kwang Mok said so too. But I don't know what Fat An Thanbo is. He absolutely could not believe what he had just heard. His innocent face, Truong Khan's expression showed no trace of a lie, only gave him a bigger headache. What? You don't know? He immediately thought of the boy's sublime form, Fat An Thanbo and Long Trao Thu. Those are Kwang Mok's 2 signature techniques. In that case, fearing the old man wouldn't believe him, Truong Khan scrambled to explain. I have really never learned martial arts from Kwang Mok. There were a few things Hong Ngo couldn't figure out. Just living with him, but not as a disciple. How strange. Master Hong Ngo was deep in thought. He knows martial arts without ever learning them. The old master suddenly asked the boy to show him his hand. The moment Truong Khan's hand touched his, several streams of energy formed around them. The old man pondered a little more deeply. He realized that Truong Khan possessed a vortex of powerful energy within his body. His 6th level true chi tried to approach the boy, but it was impossible. My pure internal energy is being pushed back. A cold chill of shock ran through his entire body. At this age, how could he possibly have such profound internal power? Truong Can wondered to himself. Another master, why does everyone want to see my hands? He spoke up to rouse the old master, yes. Great Master Hong Ngo. Truong Can stammered, actually, the master said I was very strange, and that I might be in danger. Did I really do something wrong? Hong Ngo also found it difficult to answer without feeling conflicted. It could be dangerous or it could be nothing. The boy, worried, asked for an explanation. What does that mean? Then what should I do? There are only 3 years left. The pupils in Hong Ngo's eyes trembled violently. He was so curious that he forgot all etiquette and moved closer to the boy. What happens in 3 years? If there is something difficult to say, you can tell me. Truong Can sank deep into thought upon hearing his words. Although Hong Ngo was growing more impatient, he tried to wait for the boy's answer. The boy finally decided to tell him everything. The thing is, I was born with an ill fate, so I had to live away from home for 15 years. His voice grew quieter and quieter as he began to confide in the master. The mountain forest seemed to stir, witnessing their conversation. A moment later, Truong Can sighed, finishing his old memory. Hong Ngo was stunned. So just by imitating Kwang Mok, he was able to achieve such mastery. This kid is truly no ordinary person. He doesn't look like he has the makings of a martial artist, yet he managed to reach this realm all on his own. Just teach him a few simple moves, and release him into the martial world, and he would be hailed as a rising star. Not a once-in-a-century talent, but once in 10,000 years. Hong Ngo finally understood this arrangement. If that truly is his destiny, then entrusting him to Kwang Mok was truly a wise decision. My junior brother, the abbot, really has a keen eye. However, Truong Can showed his impatience, but the great master said I could be in danger. Then what was the point of enduring all these years? There are only 3 years left. The old man tried to calm his chaotic emotions. Living with that disagreeable Kwang Mok for 7 years, what could possibly be worse? Do not worry, set your mind at ease. Hong Ngo deeply recited a few mantras. Worry sickens the mind and sorrow sickens the body. The Buddha will never abandon the merits that you have accumulated. Truong Can replied naively, but I have not accumulated any merits. Hong Ngo was lost in his own thoughts again. Just by living with Kwang Mok, you are already accumulating merit. This child is quite interesting. How should I make use of this opportunity? The old man carefully instructed, young man, do not tell Kwang Mok that you met me. Our meeting today is a secret. Truong Can honestly wanted to refuse. But I cannot lie to my master. The old man quickly tried to persuade him. It is not lying, just do not mention you met me. Hong Ngo explained briefly, I just want to surprise Kwang Mok. Truong Can had no choice but to agree with the old man. Yes, I will do as you say, great master. Hong Ngo put his palms together and quickly took his leave. He performed a farewell bow. Amitabha Buddha. Truong Can, understanding the etiquette, did the same. Take care, great master, Amitabha Buddha. Hong Ngo then smiled and said goodbye to the young boy. Truong Can was also friendly, expressing his gentle demeanor. Seeing the old man walk further and further away, Truong Can suddenly felt a bit of regret. Walking like that, he must be able to travel far very quickly. What a pity, I should have paid closer attention. Inside the Shaolin Temple in the abbot's quarters, another visitor arrived. Martial Uncle Hong Ngo, what brings you here? The old man didn't hesitate to get straight to the point. Kwang Mok's child knows martial arts, but he said he is not a disciple. Kwang Tin exclaimed in surprise, what he knows martial arts. Kwang Van, however, explained very calmly, having lived in Shaolin for 7 years, it's not strange that he knows some martial arts. Hong Ngo, slightly annoyed, questioned his junior martial brother. Did Kwang Van conspire with Kwang Mok, take him as a disciple, and then pretend not to know? Kwang Van immediately denied it. How could I possibly deceive you, martial uncle? Hong Ngo then questioned him. Then why does that child know Long Trao Thu and Fadan Thanbo? Hearing this, the two of them were instantly shocked. What the ultimate skills of Shaolin? Kwang Tin interjected loudly, senior brother Kwang Van. If that's true, then this is serious. That child was only sent here to be raised, yet he was taught the ultimate skills of Shaolin. Kwang Van stroked his beard, thinking of a response. He intended to defend Kwang Mok. Kwang Mok is not that kind of person. You know that too. There must be a reason. Hong Ngo became harsher. I saw it with my own eyes. There's no need to say more. Quickly summon Kwang Mok here to clarify things. Kwang Van hesitated. How could this have happened? I will investigate. However, he also quickly saw through the old man. But Martial Uncle, did you come here just to talk about this? If there's something on your mind, Martial Uncle, just say it directly. Startled Hong Ngo could only manage a wry laugh. Junior brother Kwang Van, you truly are very perceptive. The old man immediately spoke with a hidden meaning. Actually, I have had a bit of an enlightenment recently, so I need the 6 Ngok Fat Truong. For a moment, Kwang Van grew anxious. Therefore, he remained silent. On the other hand, Kwang Tin directly challenged him. Why? Martial Uncle, what do you need the 6 Ngok Fat Truong for? Kwang Van firmly refused. Venerable Martial Uncle, you know full well the importance of the sect leader's token. This is Tio Lam, after all. I cannot give them to you. Hong Ngo immediately became tense. The very future of Tio Lam could be at stake. Junior brother, are you looking down on my small enlightenment? He immediately threatened him. Martial Uncle, do you want me to go against the ancestors' teachings? Hong Ngo answered frankly, that's right. Hearing this, Kwang Van became even more resolute. In that case, I stand by my decision. I cannot give them to you. The expression on his face was filled with frustration. Meanwhile, he still maintained an unfathomable expression. Kwang Tin, standing beside them, had already figured it out. I know why Martial Uncle wants the 6 Ngok Fat Truong. There is a much deeper reason for this. The sect leader has the right to use the 6 Ngok Fat Truong to make exceptions and break any rule. Martial Uncle wants to use the 6 Ngok Fat Truong to lift the ban placed upon him, the ban that forbids him from taking disciples. Kwang Tin was very certain. Martial Uncle wants to take that child as his disciple. The old man could no longer suppress his fury. Junior brother, are you absolutely refusing to hand over the 6 Ngok Fat Truong? Kwang Van tried not to be swayed by his words. You have always been this way, mischievous, since you were a child. Always liked to tease others. He vividly remembered the old man's past. You were always scolded by master, but even after growing up, you never changed. It got so bad you were forbidden from taking disciples. In the end, Kwang Van had no choice but to concede. I can lend them to you, Martial Uncle, for 4 hours. Kwang Tin, alarmed, wanted him to take back his decision. Kwang Van continued to speak. That alone can't be considered a violation of the ancestors' teachings. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, Hong Ngo was smiling again. All right, I will definitely keep my promise. Kwang Tin could only watch helplessly as everything unfolded. Kwang Van focused on repeating the chant, Namo Amitabha Buddha. Finally, Hong Ngo left the place with a smile. Soon dawn began to break. Kwang Mok was secretly observing Chuang Kan from behind. He tried to suppress his astonishment. His footwork has improved again. Unbelievable. Kwang Mok frowned, unable to understand. How is this kid's footwork improving so quickly? I can't figure it out. What's more, the morning wind is so cold, yet he doesn't seem to feel it at all. The more he moves, the faster he gets. Kwang Mok wondered. Truong Kan, looking particularly cheerful today, answered honestly. There is more qi in the morning. And Master, the strange thing is, even if I absorb qi all day long, it's never as good as in the morning. He was completely shocked. What, you absorb qi all day long? And here I thought you were just picking wild fruits or fooling around. So you were actually absorbing qi this whole time. Truong Kan continued to explain enthusiastically. I can absorb more qi when I'm meditating, but I can absorb it even without meditating. I even absorb qi while folding my blanket and sweeping the yard. Kwang Mok hesitated. Do you mean you are constantly practicing breath control even while doing other things? The boy looked surprised. You don't, Master, Kwang Mok thought to himself. Controlling his breath anytime, anywhere. The amount of qi he can take in would be minuscule. Without focus, it is impossible to accumulate qi. He found this to be completely unbelievable. Practicing breath control while working is impossible. And yet no wonder your internal energy is so profound. Practicing breath control while working is supposed to be impossible, and yet no wonder your internal energy is so profound. 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 So he can actually do it. Regardless, he decided to teach him. Hey kid, qi must be controlled delicately. Your skills won't get stronger just by stuffing yourself. Truong Khan naively countered his words. For a moment, Kwang Mok was taken aback by his words. He had no choice but to try a different explanation. What I mean is you should practice breath control at all times. That is not very effective either. Truong Khan nodded. I know I cannot eat much qi during the day. And it is just breathing after all. Inside, Kwang Mok really wanted to scream in protest. He was extremely worried about Truong Khan. Practicing on your own and using internal energy incorrectly can lead to Tao Hua Nihapma. How did this kid end up like this?